All right, before we dive into the prog for the day, we need to give you guys an update on this level 99 Beastmaster Earthquake Dot Beast. Now this build is heavily inspired by a guy named The Curse, who did a fantastic build guide for pretty much the setup I'm playing here, so big shout outs to him. As you guys know, I wanted to play a barbarian in this game, and this really satisfies a lot of things that I wanted, which is no pet. I wanted to experiment with a low life setup, because that's something that I think is really cool, especially due to the Berserker node on this character, and have, you know, some fun skills that I liked already, like Swipe, Leap, the War Cry, Frenzy Totem, but instead of playing with our Sabretooth, which we were doing before, and not really scaling him, just kind of had him there, we're swapping over to Earthquake, which is some nice big blast in AoE, so pretty freaking sweet. We can talk about the skills first, because that's kind of like one of those things that like makes the build a thing. Then we can go over the passives and then the gear, because the gear is kind of one of those things that like ties it all together. For our Swipe talent, I'm going down here into Aspect of the Panther. We're getting the attack speed, and then we are getting plus maximum stacks. I love this talent right here, but with this build, you can only really put like 2 points into it, or else you can start to out-regen the ward gain thing. So like, you're using a life drain ward gain setup, and you start to actually out-regen how much life drain you're doing, which kind of knocks you out of this nice Berserker range, so you gotta be careful. So 2 points there is what I've got right now. You can also play the build with Tempest, and that might solve that issue, but I think it's overall worse because you lose a lot of this cool stuff, which is a teeny bit of chance to bleed and not that huge of a deal. But you get a physical resistance shred at 50% chance, and Fizz resistance is definitely different than Armor Shred. Armor Shred will reduce the damage from hits, or like, I guess it'll increase the damage from hits, but most of our damage is actually coming from a dot, like a physical damage dot, not a bleed. So reducing physical resistance is actually kind of a big deal, which is pretty cool. Makes those dots tick harder. So Duality of Nature allows us to get mana from our Swipe, and because I liked my build before not using mana, but this actually does use mana, and just to imagine that it's Fury or Rage instead of mana, but this basically gives you mana every Swipe hit, which is cool. Over here, we have to go into Way of the Hunt for a little bit more hit damage on Swipe and Health Leech. The Health Leech, we actually cancel out our Health Leech with our gear, again, to try to keep our health low, to make sure our ward is regaining as fast as possible, and to make sure we're staying in the Berserker range. So we have to basically just take this talent to get to this, which is fine. It's damage and AoE, that's fine. We're mostly just taking this talent to get to this, to Culling. Culling is actually kind of a big deal. It's very nice against bosses. Whenever a boss is 14% health, you hit them with one swipe and they just die. So maybe it's a lot of points invested to just get to this Cull effect, but it's 3 points and it's pretty worth it. And you know, you're doing a teeny bit more damage in AoE with these. If I had more points to spend with like plus skills from Omnis or something like that, I might put it into Rending to do more physical shred chance, or maybe I'd put it into Wingardium Reach to get just a little bit more AoE and damage. But I think the physical shred is probably the most insane, because most of our damage is coming from Earthquake, not Swipe. So investing a ton of damage into Swipe isn't that big of a deal, but getting the increased stacks of Aspect of the Panther for global damage percent and global melee damage per stack is insane, because this does buff Earthquake, which is awesome. For my War Cry, I'm primarily using War Cry to give me like an AoE stun and a grouping effect with Apprehend, and a Berserk effect by going down into this. So you're invulnerable to War Cry, you go Berserk, the Berserk lasts longer, you get more stacks, and you get more attack speed per stack, up to 48%, which is kind of crazy. Pretty dang cool. I am also using it as a debuff removal. Makes me invulnerable during War Cry. I have a little bit of healing, I don't want it, but it just has to have it in order to get the cleanse, because cleanse is a pretty big deal. You get like poison stacks, you get like armor shred on you, you get like resistance reduction on you. You don't want that, so you can cleanse that off. And I have it affecting a big area right now. I think that's probably the best way to use it. Frailty, I already apply Frailty, and you're already immune for like a second, and then things are stunned for like 1.5 seconds, so I don't think Frailty is that big of a deal. So I just went with AoE on both of these to kind of like put extra points. If I had more points, maybe I'd actually even go into like this. I don't know, to put like bleed on stuff or something like that. That'd be kind of funny. Maelstrom's kind of a neat option, but let's not do too much like extra stuff. Earthquake is insane. It has so many plus, you know, or more like damage things. Like it increases the damage by a certain percent. So much stuff, it's crazy. But the idea behind this is turning our damage mostly into like aftershocks, which is really, really nice. So aftershocks are now a damage over time thing, dealing their normal hit damage each second. Aftershocks last 3 seconds. So then you buff the aftershock damage and duration by 100% to make it deal even more. You are dealing extra aftershock damage with this talent. You're making more minimum aftershocks with this talent. You're making enemies slowed, which is cool. But really, it's mostly just to kind of get down to here, which gives you the mana efficiency and increased stun chance. It costs like 50 mana on its own. Now it costs 39 mana with this. And it's pretty mana intensive. So you have to kind of make sure that you're not draining your mana too fast. Just because it's kind of nice to get all your juices flowing and then dump a bunch of earthquakes to stack up the dots as much as possible. This just makes it do a little bit more AoE. But it does unlock the possibility of having 2 maximum aftershocks, which then unlocks the ability for your aftershocks to appear around your totems instead if they are nearby. And I am so perplexed about this talent because it does seem to increase your damage, but it doesn't seem to do what it says it's gonna do. I play mostly on controller, and then my aftershocks just kind of go wherever. But if you're playing mouse and keyboard, you'll notice that the aftershocks, the little rock juts out of the ground, and if that's the aftershock, then it goes on your cursor, so you can kind of control where it goes with that. But then there's also these gigantic like fissures that happen in the ground, and those seem to do damage too. So I'm perplexed on exactly how that works, but it does work. I've tested a lot of different earthquake variations, like this one, where it's like a ground slam and a cone. It's cool, but it doesn't seem to hit as hard. This works in a weird way, but it does work, so I'm still doing it. It's kind of wild. The really, really big damage scalers that I will put points into as I get more points are Shatterquake to do more damage against chills or frozen enemies, or I'll put points into Crushing Wake. I think more points in Crushing Wake right now would be fine for like mapping to stun mobs more frequently, but in terms of just doing big damage to bosses, Shatterquake just gives you 10% more than this does. So there's that. But all the other points are kind of like enough points to get there. I think 1 minimum aftershock is cool. I haven't put any points into the AoE, but that might be kind of fun to experiment with if I get a bunch more points. Like right now I only have a +2 earthquake helmet. It could be a +4, and then we could get ominous, which is another +1 to skills. So we could have 3 more points in this to spend, and I think they would probably mostly go 1, 2, 3 and just do more damage with all the stuff. But this the baseline is like getting to aftershock dots and getting to totems, making your aftershocks proc around totems just to get more aftershocks out, more dots stacking up. It gets pretty intense, and it can scale even harder. So for leap is mostly just mobility, but it is kind of nice to have. Again, controller leap is way worse than mouse and keyboard leap because you can jump way further on mouse and keyboard and with more precision, but I don't know, I just still like playing it. I did try to get the immunity to leap. I put a little bit of mana cost reduction in area in leap. We've got a little bit more cooldown recovery on leap. Stun chance is kind of whatever, but I did want to get the chance to reset. I might not need 4 points in this. I might not need any points in it at all, but I just don't know where else they would go. Maybe a little bit more mana cost reduction. But we do put 5 points in increased melee damage, which is cool. Just a teeny bit of frenzy is neat, but we're mostly pathing this way so we can get another cleanse. We unfortunately do have to take another healing talent. We really don't want healing. It's hilarious because I loved all the regen that I had on my first like leveling Beastmaster build, and now it's like you want 0 regen so you can regen your ward as hard as possible, which is kind of wild because we'll talk about ward in a minute, but it gives you a lot of like room on your gear to add a lot of damage reduction because your recovery is accounted for just by having a ton of health and health drain effects. So it's very interesting because the lower your health is, the more ward per second you get, basically. So it's kind of nuts. But yeah, I go for the cleanse, I go for some utility, and that's pretty much it with leap. For frenzy totem, I used to love this path, but I've been trying to get a little tankier, and I've been trying to have more totem uptime so that I can have more attack speed uptime. I think that really works out better than this. So first things first, I probably would go down here to get the reduced mana cost and more melee damage. Get you a tether for more damage. Tether range increase is very nice to have. And then I go up here, 5 points in the totem's health and duration, and then 5 points in the area of which it's effective. So if I got more points on this, I would probably start putting them into Rabidity. Like if I get like another plus skills, I'd probably just put 1 point here for extra added effect. We're not doing any kind of crits, so that doesn't really help us to have crit, but if you're doing a crit build, there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with the Beastmaster with crit. So that's how I have my my stuff set up. In terms of passives, we had to really trim down my Beastmaster tree quite a bit. It's basically a barb. Exactly, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's you nailed it. You nailed it. You're picking up what I'm putting down. You see what I'm going for here. So for the Primalist tree, I put a bunch of points in strength. You want strength as much as you can get. So anytime there's a strength, you want to take it. So we got strength. Unfortunately, it's paired with health regen. Like I said, you don't really want health regen, but whatever. We do want health, so more health is good. We're picking up dual wield because we are dual wielding in this one. For the low life setup, you must dual wield. For the if you decide to play this build without low life, which you can do, especially while leveling, you don't need to dual wield, because dual wielding just makes you take more damage. You don't need it. But then we have increased health, which allows us to go all the way over here to the Berserker node, which is not something I want to play if I'm not playing low health. I think it's just too situational. But if you're playing low health, this is why you do it. This is why you play low health. It is for more melee damage on low health, which is 35%. You get 75% more damage. It used to be 100% more damage, but they nerfed it a little bit. And then you also take less damage on low health. So 20% less damage taken on low health, 75% more damage dealt at low health. So nuts. Insane. For the Beastmaster stuff, again, we're going strength and reduced damage taken from nearby enemies. We're putting 1 point in savagery just to access aspect of the shark. It is nice that it increases melee damage by 75% and melee attack speed by 10%. So it's cool, but we're not investing in it like we were before. I do want to put points in aspect of the boar to get, I mean, like aspect of the boar when you get hit is cool, but I really want access to this, which is an extra 15% damage reduction granted. Again, kind of unfortunate that it comes with health regen because we don't actually want it. So it feels like there's some anti-synergy in the build and we're like wasting power in some ways in Beastmaster, but it's still so good and it's still so strong and fun. I think it ends up being okay. It ends up being all right, but less health regen the better. So you're going to be finding ways to cancel out your leech with gear. So, but this gives us 30% damage reduction from aspect of the boar, which procs when we get hit or when we attack things with this talent. So this gives us more aspect of the boar uptime and strength. Again, strength is massive, and we'll talk about why in a moment. We get health as well, which is just always nice. The more health we have, the more ward per second we get, basically, is how that ends up being. And we have more physical damage, which is nice. A teeny bit of vitality and resist. This is not a big deal, but it does kind of help us get to this, which is attack speed, which is nuts. The poison damage is not that big of a deal. However, aspect of the Viper is a buff that grants 100% chance to poison, whatever, and 100% increased damage over time. That's big, because what is our main source of damage? Aftershock dots. So doubling that damage is quite a bit. Very cool. And then we come all the way over here to get all the strength and the physical damage, which is great. None of the companion stuff is important. Now, that's the Beastmaster stuff. You're going to specialize into Beastmaster, but if you're gonna like level with this build, you're probably gonna want to put some points into Shaman a little earlier, because you need access to Earthquake, which happens at level 15 in the Shaman tree. So attunement and penetration gives you damage. Earthquake scales with attunement for one, and then of course penetration just applies to all resists penetration, I would imagine, including physical penetration, which is what Earthquake is getting scaled off of. A ton of health here, and this is our only source of chill in our build the way we have this set up. So remember, Earthquake is doing a % more damage to chilled targets. This is where the chill comes from. It is on hit, so all of your swipes, your leaps, your Earthquake, like actual initial slam is all a hit. that can give you a chance to chill. 40% chance is plenty, but it also gives us health, which is cool. This is a kind of a fun little talent that I'll put points in. I'm gonna finish off my leveling with points here, which is armor with active totem, mana regen with active totem, whatever. But then you get 5% attack speed with an active totem, and you're gonna have a totem down a lot, both with actually plopping down your frenzy totem and with proccing thorns totems, which you'll do with an idol. I'll talk about that in a second. So that's kind of cool. I'll probably put one more point there to finish off my leveling, because I'm at level 99 right now. And the druid tree. First things first, I would put 5 points here, and then start filling in points here in Druidic Prowess. Attunement and Strength, both scaling Earthquake. Then it gives you all attributes, which is more Attunement and Strength, and Vitality, which is all useful. And then I would go back and put the points there. So that's how I would allocate my points for this setup. Now, talking about the gear, this is where the build really comes alive. This is some very interesting stuff. This is the low life version. If you are playing the full life version, you can do all those same talents, except don't take Berserker, and you probably don't need to take Dual Wield, and then you can put your points somewhere else. Things that give you more juice, right? You could probably put points into whatever. Maybe more aspect of the shark or something like that could be kind of fun. Whatevs, right? Maybe more points in Druid or something like that. I haven't really searched that too much because I've been playing the low life version, but it just gives you a couple more points to play around with, and that's fine. Maybe even endurance. Maybe even you just put the 6 points and life in the wilderness and get more vitality and endurance threshold and call it good. And then when you want to respec, you take those points out, you put it into Berserker and Harmony of Blades, boom, good to go. But if you're playing the low life version, this is what it looks like, okay? There's a couple important items, and they're all based around this kind of idea. An item like this, the life drain, ward gain items. 20% of your current health is lost per second, but 20% of missing health gained as ward per second. So you're draining your life. That gap in your life is accounted for by the 20% missing health gain as a ward per second. So then it fills up your ward based on that missing health. So you want to pull your health, you want to make your health pool as big as possible, pull it down and as low as possible, and then fill it with ward and keep it low. So I'm using 2 items to do that. One of them is Exsanguinous, which is not an uncommon, or sorry, it is a fairly common. Yeah, it is not uncommon. It's fairly common to get this. And then I'm also using Last Steps of the Living, which is also another fairly common, unique item. Another thing that you must have for this build is a Cleaver Solution. Cleaver Solution is actually an insane item. It's not very rare, it's not a real high level item, but it is just loaded with good stuff with no drawbacks, besides maybe not having like massive melee damage. But the main thing that allows this build to happen is your intelligence is equal to your strength. So you stack a ton of strength, which gives you earthquake damage, it gives you armor percent, and it also gives you ward retention, because that's what intelligence does. So intelligence is responsible for ward retention, which means that your ward like doesn't decay as fast, or there's like a certain like a threshold as well. But basically, this helps your ward stay on your character for longer, which allows the ward to stack up higher. So if you don't have an item like this, if you don't have intelligence, like ward's like not gonna do a ton. It's at least not gonna stay on your guy, right? So you want to stack a ton of strength to turn it into damage, tankiness, and basically life with your ward setup. So that's kind of crazy. For this build in particular, I absolutely would recommend you get some Boulder Fists. They're nice for the melee stun chance, melee stun duration, because you are doing Earthquake, and that has a pretty good chance to stun. It's nice, things do get stunned. Armor is nuts, health is nuts, and it's nice because you cannot leech health. And again, not what you want most of the time if you're playing like a full life setup, but for us, we don't want to recover HP. And we already struggle to recover with like recovering HP when we don't want to, just because of like the leaps and the shouts, and picking up potions and getting regen from our aspect of the Panther. All that pulls our HP up, which makes our ward not regen as fast and can potentially knock you out of that 75% damage, 20% damage reduction state, which we don't want. So ideally what I do here is I find an exalted pair of life drain ward gain experimental affixed gloves, and I can get that with like strength and that life drain ward gain thing on these. and that would be ideal to pull my health down harder. But these are the pieces of gear that you must have. Is Cleaver Solution, Life Drain, Ward Gain. That's what you need. Past that, it's like getting your resists well set up, getting more life on your guy, getting more armor on your guy, and stacking a butt ton of strength. That's the dream. That's what we're looking for. So this is a setup that I've gotten just playing the game at level 99. We have 2 1LP cleavers, which is cool. It means I can add things like attack speed to them. Maybe flat melee damage on them would be great. My helmet is a plus earthquake with strength and resists. My amulet is resists, health. Unfortunately, we have elemental damage on there, which is like not good, didn't do anything for me, but my gear is still just not that great. But like health and resists and strength is like that's what you want on as much pieces of gear as possible. My rings are, oh yeah, another thing that's important is a little bit of mana regen. You do want a little bit of mana regen. So you can get that on your rings, you can get mana regen on your belt, and I've got that on all 3 of those things. The mana regen comes from the implicit modifier of this actual item type, so a little bit of mana regen there, a little bit of mana regen on my belt. On the belt, you want like health and health. You want to stack the HP pool up big time. So this one has like health and then hybrid health, which is cool. Just bigger percent health is fine too. The ring is, again, this thing does have strength on it. It's a very good boy. Strength, mana regen, and resists. Excellent. The gloves, again, are boulder fists. I would love to add strength, and the life drain ward gain on those would be amazing. With boots, this is like your only place to get movement speed, so I'm glad that we got movement speed on these. Armor and, you know, reduced bonus damage taken from crits is like whatever. I'd probably rather have movement speed and, you guessed it, strength. And maybe even like a cooldown recovery on that would be cool. A very fun relic to be able to farm is the Twisted Heart of Eukaryotes, and that comes from the Death of the Dragons, or Reign of the Dragons, or whatever it is, timeline. It's the boss, and he drops it, Reign of Dragons. You farm that. It's also nice to farm that so you can get your 20% all res, which is cool. I have 2 1LP versions of this, which is pretty neat. So looking forward to maybe running some Temporal Dungeon tonight or today and see if we can get that done. Another little neat part of the build that is cool is this thing right here is kind of tricky. This is a very good one too. It's a very good one. Not only did it roll a max 10% chance to summon a Thorn Totem on hit, it also gave me increased aspect of the Viper effect, which is definitely, like, a lot of times you're gonna get that Thorn effect to just wear whatever you get, but the aspect of the Viper is not only not useless, it's actually pretty good because it makes my dots tick harder, which is cool. For the idols, you're pretty much using these to fill in resists. I have a little bit of Vitality Fizz resist, damage over time Void resist, damage over time Void resist, Vitality Fizz resist. These are really cool though. Just if you don't need resists, you can just take armor and health. My armor isn't really stacked up that crazy right now, but it will be. So like each point of armor is like later on, what, like 6 to 8 points of armor, which is nuts. These are always really, really good, is the increased health, and a resist is fine. Even better is probably increased health percent and flat health, but if it fills in resists, that's fine too. So we have another one there, increased health, fire resist, increased health, and then flat health. Those are really good to have, but I'm using like, this is like a little wimpy one, but I think I need the cold res, so it works out. So you want, in your idols, you want the chance to spawn a Thorn Totem, and then you want resists and life, basically. Does this build do 500 plus? Right now I'm at like 300 and 325, and it feels fine. This build is absolutely capable of 500, 700 plus. Again, the Curse, who made the build guide, thoroughly believes that this build would be capable of 1,000 plus. You just might use a shield, and the shield that you would use at that point is called this one, the Bastion of Honor. 1% block chance per strength against enemies within 4 meters. So ideally you're gonna have like 100 plus strength. So then you just like scale this thing with block effectiveness and you become like a giga tank, which is very cool. So yeah, that's a very interesting option. Another cool way to go with this build when I get a little bit better gear is this ring, Siphon of Anguish, combined with this thing, Shattered Chains. So you get the stacking Doom effect. Doom already gives you 4% increased melee damage against the target. stack up to 4 times. And then this also gives you 5% more melee damage per stack of Doom, so you're doing quite a bit more damage to targets afflicted with Doom, right? And so that's really nice, and this also gives you a ton more armor. So eventually I think I'll go that route. Just taking... Right now, I'd rather have a little bit more, like, HP pool, but more armor and more damage is definitely a good option. So those are very, very cool to consider for, like, later in the game when we get a little bit stronger and maybe we get more stuff. But yeah, that's one way to go. And then another thing I want is an Omnius necklace and a red ring. Those would be really, really cool for, like, Giga endgame gear. But we'll keep working on that. But yeah, I think that's, like, all we needed to talk about in terms of the actual, like, build setup. We could go do, like, a 325, because it's just, like, the highest that I've got. So I'll show you guys what we're cooking with. But the build's a lot of fun. I have been thoroughly enjoying it. We've been blasting pretty good. Pretty good. Been able to boss really effectively. Been able to level really smoothly. I haven't really started, like, pushing corruption too hard, except for kind of just recently. But what you do is kind of leap in, throw down your totem, get some swipes going, and just start dropping quakes on people, man. I could, like, be gathering enemies up a little bit harder than this. Get your war cry out to really stack the berserk, but a couple taps of swipe to butter them up, get you some mana, and then you just drop the hammer. Pretty fun. And Exsanguinous does give you, like, attack speed and movement speed when you use a potion, which is cool. But I do run the risk of out-regenning my my ward threshold that my low health threshold that I'm trying to maintain. Yeah, you just kind of keep your totem out, just swipe it up and slam with the quakes. And you'll notice my little thorn totems kind of proc and distract enemies, but also give me a little bit of extra damage. Yeah, something was just dead all the way over here. So, like, the aftershocks definitely, like, seek out and destroy enemies from, like, far away sometimes, which is cool. There's a crit version of this build to play, but I think the dot version is easier to gear for, because you don't have to gear for crit. And it also is nice for clear, because the aftershocks, like, you know, they go seek out enemies, which is cool. And again, huge shout out to the Curse for putting together, like, an awesome build guide for this. This is like a... When I first started playing the game, this is kind of like what I envisioned for my character. It was like a leaping, shouting, totem dropping, butt kicking barbarian. And although barbarian isn't really an option in this game as, like, a character to start with, this dude is basically a barbarian, and I really enjoy it. So I wanted to make a little build update for you guys about my gear, my passives, my stats, and everything like that, and just, like, the basic idea of how to set it up. We just found another thorn totem right there, and Aspect of the Boar, also very excellent. That would be cool for tankiness, so that's cool too. But my plan for this guy is to keep blasting, is to keep pumping him up, keep pushing up corruption a little bit, and see how far we can take the build. And we, of course, are live every day on YouTube and Twitch if you guys want to hang out for that. You guys are watching right now are in the right place, that's for sure. But we're going to keep scaling this guy up. We're going to see if we can get some cool gear and get some LP on our items. And I think today we're going to knock out some prophecies and maybe even make some temporal dungeon runs and see if we can put some cool stuff on the gear we have and find some new gear and then buff up even more, because the way this character scales is wild. You basically just keep stacking strength and keep stacking the basics of more HP, more armor. I have some cool items to swap into, which will help me do that. And then, of course, just find LP on those uniques and turn them into insane legendaries by finding good exalted items to do that with. So I'm having a blast with this game. Hope you guys are too. Stay tuned for more content from me. We're going to keep on streaming today and buckle down and see if we can make some gains. But if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you give the video a nice big thumbs up. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.